So the group has a long history. I've been writing music as a band leader for almost 10 years. And I started off my career in Boston when I was a grad student at the New England Conservatory. And I started the folk jazz concept when I met Chris Hersch, who's an amazing guitarist and banjo player.
He called me up in 2005 with this idea for a new project, and it was just me and him originally at that time. I played banjo while I was there. I played finger-picking acoustic guitar. So I wasn't just a jazz player, but I did those other kind of rootsy things.
And Chris and I put together, arranged a number of these songs and sort of like started the whole process of getting out there and playing together.
He'd sent me these charts, and these charts were these crazy meter-shifting tunes. We basically invented the original sound, which was just acoustic guitar, and saxophone, playing these melodies, these like folk melodies with odd meters.
And since I've moved to New York, Chris and I still play every week. We perform at the Liberty Hotel in Beacon Hill in Boston with Blake Newman on bass. Blake and I also go a long ways back. We used to play in a group called Musiner, which is kind of a world music, Armenian folk jazz kind of ensemble. So actually in some ways that group is somewhat similar to the Daniel Bennett Group. So Blake and I really hit it off, and we still work together quite a bit. We also feature a very, very good friend of mine whose name is Rimez Yuzgiris, and he's a poet, and he's got a fabulous poem that we were able to use on one of the songs on the album.
We have a good understanding of each other. He knows my poems, I know his music, and so we're able to do that and just fit things together on the spot. It's a great opportunity to work with other artists, and I'm really happy and grateful that Daniel invited me to participate.
I met Daniel up in Boston, where we both went to the New England Conservatory, and we had a lot of mutual friends.
Mark comes from a rock background as much as a jazz background, both. He's very well versed, very versatile player, so he was kind of perfect for the project. Mark and I knew each other when we both lived in Boston 4 or 5 years ago, and we sort of reconnected recently on this when I moved to New York.
One day, Daniel, he gave me a call. He said, I have these songs and tunes I'm working on. I have a couple of gigs I'm going to book. Would you be interested in playing in the project?
I gave him my charts, and I kind of gave him a brief outline of what I did, and we really hit it off. And from there, we sort of took off and rehearsed a lot and went through a lot of musical ideas and musical concepts together. And Mark introduced me to Tyson Stubelek, who's on the album. Also Peter Brendler, who plays bass on the album. Tyson plays drums.
Tyson Stubelek is just a very clever drummer. He can come up with all these great parts that really add to the overall composition. And same with Pete, the bass player. And they're both guys who really know how to listen to.
And we began to develop a sound mainly from just performing all over New York.
From there, we just started gigging a lot and playing lots of his tunes, and then eventually he said, do you want to go into the studio? And then that's when we started working on the album.
And then we finally said, let's go into the studio and let's put this on tape, let's put this out, let's go somewhere new with this project.
Going into the studio, it was how do we capture that energy? How do we capture that magic and translate such a great live performance and then really get that down?
Everybody was just they get it. This is what they're doing, and they want to create music, and they all give input, very constructive input. And Daniel was great about listening to them and then discussing what to do.
When we went into the studio, it was very much a decision to simply recreate a live show. You know, let's just play all day and we'll sort it out later.
There's so many great tunes on it, and beautiful arrangements, and lots of awesome saxophone playing, clarinet playing on Daniel's part. Different guitar textures and drum textures.
The album's fun. I think it's in some ways it has almost like a cinematic kind of quality to it.
Just like there's a surprise element in it. in every track when you listen down.
There's also a lot of group chemistry required. So I think when the whole group kind of formed to make the album, it was kind of a combination of all these factors that made it work and made it work so well. We all came and we came to play and we kind of threw down and we did it.
My background is American folk music, rock, elements of jazz. Some would say probably elements of contemporary classical music, although it's not, I don't think of that as being a major influence sometimes. I think for me it's more the folk tradition that I come from.
Daniel's music is not intuitive. It's not something that you can just feel. Like there's definitely a cerebral element that you have to digest first before you can just play your emotions or play fluently.
As the musician, I feel I definitely get something out of it, but equally, or if not probably more importantly, you can see when you perform the music live that you take the listener on a journey as well, and you can really connect.
And everybody's very open-minded. When I put together groups, I never really tell people what to play. I'll give people charts.
You're working with Daniel, it's just like, all right, everything's cool. He's extremely clear and concise when he's dealing with musicians. Like in terms whether it's money or time, what's expected or what do you wear. He was the most professional person I've worked with or worked for.
There's a lot of trust. I trust them, they trust me. I take care of them, they take care of me. I'm a big believer in, being honest and playing who you are. People can recognize if it's phony, if it's not authentic.
He's a good friend and a great person to work with, definitely.
Performing live is always a very emotional, spiritual experience. It's a very intense experience that involves not only human emotion because you're playing through your instruments to an audience, but it also involves just remembering what you did at the last show, using a little bit of that, but also doing new things that maybe are completely unexpected.
The live performance, the improvisational nature, the in-the-momentness of jazz definitely applies to Daniel's music.
We are just always out playing live, and each live show we're trying different stuff out and new ideas.
Unlike a literary reading where people come expecting to hear literature, people don't expect poetry, and it's a really wonderful way to share poetry with them together with music. That's the fun thing about live jazz is you discover things, you learn more.
The unexpected turns or dynamics or things that will happen live make the music interesting.
So many bands aren't necessarily a live band. There's always that rock band you love and you love their album, and then you go and you see them live and you're like, that was kind of disappointing.
For me, it adds a lot to the poetry because the music is so good, and it allows me to do something most writers don't do, which is to work together with people and have a collaborative artistic creation.
It's neat because everybody brings something different, and the group is always, there's always something that's unexpected that's going to happen.
You could put the sound under the broad umbrella of jazz, but I think that doesn't really quite accurately describe exactly what we're doing.
One thing about Daniel's music and what's cool about it is that it evolves and he allows it to evolve.
We take it in a million different directions. Sometimes we slip into a very ethereal zone, sometimes it's the groovy Americana thing, sometimes it's a mixed meter.
Kind of modern, but then in a sense it's also fun. It's very goofy in a way, has a lot of sense of humor in the music.
Especially in the improvisational sections. I mean, each of his tunes has a written-in time to be completely improvisational.
Folk influences and rock and pop, all under this kind of jazz mindset.
It's the groovy Americana thing, sometimes it's a mixed meter. kind of sound. People have said it sounds almost has a Balkan sound to it.
And that's just something that's very interesting, and it doesn't really get done a lot in the jazz world because everybody's very either modern, traditional style playing. So he really expanded in that sense.
Within each song, it can take you on a journey through a range of feelings and emotions.
I love programmatic music. I love being able to see things when you listen to music, imagine things, maybe think about your life, maybe think about memories.
At the end of the day, anybody could learn to play an instrument, I think. But it's really how you play and what feeling you put into it and how do you captivate the listener. That's always the challenge.
It's just so great, and you want that all the time, and that's what keeps you going. That's why I play music.